Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted. I sure hope that you like it, but if you don't, you can always unlike it afterwards. I also really love it when people leave comments. It's nice to hear suggestions for videos, questions about the video itself. How you do things is always interesting to me to hear, and constructive criticism is appreciated. So thanks for those things in advance. Today I'm going to do a turquoise ring, but I wanted to do a turquoise ring in kind of an Art Deco sort of style. The head of the ring is going to have kind of a spray outward sort of texture coming out from the stone. At least that's my vision here when I'm drawing it up, and we'll see how it turns out. But I'm going to do something I've not tried before, which is to closely solder a bunch of round wires down to create this spray kind of looking texture, and see if I can do it symmetrically enough to be nice looking. So we'll see. I picked out a little oval turquoise, about I think it's a 14 by 10, and we'll make a little bezel for it, and then we'll start working on that kind of pattern, and then we'll do kind of a split band made out of a piece of low dome half round wire. So before we get started on that, though, I need to thank some people. Thank you to my patrons, who are my primary core group of supporters. I do so appreciate the community that they've built, as well as the financial contribution. So you guys are awesome. You rock. I think you're the best. The other group I need to thank is my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 16,200, which is amazing. Thank you for that. I do appreciate that. If you watch these but haven't subscribed yet, why haven't you? It doesn't cost anything, and you can click the bell and get notifications when I release the videos, so it might be a good idea to try that. I do really appreciate the nice input from you guys. Some of the comments I get are really moving, and it's really nice to know that some people are getting something out of these. So thanks for letting me know, and thank you also for the nice contributions like the Buy Me a Coffees and the Super Thanks. Those things really help with the cost of materials. So thank you for that. All right, well, let's make ourselves a Art Deco-ish turquoise ring, just for something different. This is one of my design idea books. The more recent ones come with these little conversion charts on the back, or there's several different versions actually. This one has fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters, which I find super handy. There's another one, American wire gauge 2 millimeters, which is probably useful for people overseas. I like the little grid pattern that's in the background here. It helps me to make better drawings. So let me show you what I picked out. This kind of sort of sky blue almost, or I'm not even sure. I'm not very good with color names, but it's an intense, pretty blue with kind of a brown, crackly matrix running through it, and I think it's pretty, so I think that'll make kind of a nice contrast to the clean lines that we've drawn here. You see a lot of kind of spray-looking things from Art Deco and mid-century modern kind of decor, and I'm going to do something kind of like that. I also want to not curve it so neat as this, but maybe give it a little wave to it to give it some three-dimensionality when you look down at it from the top. But I don't think it'll be too hard, as long as I can pretty cleanly solder these things down on some sheet. So I was going to try and do it. I was brainstorming for how could I create that kind of a texture, and you could probably create a template out of brass or something that kind of looks like that, and run it through the rolling mill with a piece of silver sheet and impress it into it, and that might do a pretty good job. But I wasn't 100% sure of the outcome of that, and I didn't want to go through the whole process of trying it. It might be something good to try at some point. But I thought, you know, I bet I could probably just solder some 18 gauge round wire down onto some sheet and just kind of position it exactly how I want it and get it pretty decent looking. So we'll see if I can do that with these, have them come out from the edge of this bezel that we're going to create. I'm probably going to curve it just slightly this way, like this, and then we'll do some altering the shape of it a little bit with maybe these nylon jog pliers that I have here. Keep from dinging it up too badly. Or if that doesn't work, we can also try and use some a little bit of forging with dapping punches, maybe. We'll see. After that, we'll make a band for it out of some of this 5.89 millimeter low dome half round, and we can cut a little notch on either end of the band and split it open a little bit, and then we'll make that into the band. So I think it won't be too hard of a piece, but we'll see. How the hardest part is going to be the little spray thing, so we'll give it a go. But let's make a little bezel for this guy first. I'm going to use 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip. I'm using 26 gauge, which I think is 0.41 millimeters, if I remember right. And the height is 4.76 or something like that. Yeah. But I may file it down to suit my needs. I'm just going to file this, get it nice and flat to start with. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder primarily. I use a liquid flux that I dribble on with a little kind of dropper bottle. My torch is a Silversmith model. It's an acetylene air torch, and it's a really good torch for silversmithing, I think. I use a #1 tip. I get asked that periodically. That's most of the things people typically ask. Of course, as always, if you have some other question, just leave it in the comments. I do try to answer all the comments. It may take me a day or two sometimes because I get kind of behind in my work. I'm just going to do a little bit of reshaping. I think we're pretty good on the size. A couple times. Okay, so I cut a piece of sheet that's big enough to put that on there, I think. And I kind of found the center of it. It's not perfectly, 90-degree angles. I kind of rough cut it out, but I can get pretty close to the center. Enough so that if I solder this in there, I have plenty of room to complete this design around it. So I think I'm going to dome it slightly, not dome, but kind of arc it slightly like this. And not very much, just enough to give it just a little bit of a curve. Okay, so now, in order to get this sitting on there nice, and this is the reason I'm doing this first, is because I was going to manipulate this just a little bit up and down around this edge after I solder all that stuff together. And I didn't want, if I bent it a little bit one way or the other, I didn't want it to distort the bezel too much. I still think I have it a little bit too far bent because I just need it just slightly. But then I'm going to shape the bottom of the bezel with my Dremel with an abrasive white wheel and just kind of curve it slightly so that it matches up nicely, and then we'll solder it on there. So, yeah, so you can see I just need just a tiny bit of, because it's going to rock just a little bit, so I need just a slight curve going up along this angle here and on this side. So I'm going to do that with my rotary tool, and then I'll be right back. So I got it curved just a little bit on the bottom so it matches up pretty closely to that. Make sure that's kind of sitting where I want it. Solder it on. See if we can dry that without moving it. I'm going to throw, 5 or 6 of these in here. It's quite a bit of mass in this sheet compared to the bezel, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time getting that warm before really incorporating the bezel into the area that I'm pointing the torch at. They're pretty good, actually. So I was debating whether to solder the wires on, just, make sure they're going out far enough, and then using the saw to just kind of cut out the shape. But my sawing skills aren't that great, so I think I'd rather do scribe out the shape first, and then we'll, get it as close as we can to that with the saw, and then use the file or the rotary tool to clean it up, and then we'll solder those on. So I'll show you one of the best things I have are these little templates. The way that I drew this thing was kind of use that for the circle around it, and then I just, I ended it right about there, and then just kind of tapered them out. So let's see if we can't get that centered on there and kind of scratch that into that. Okay, let's go cut that out. Okay, give this a shot. have a pretty big blade on here. I may change it to a little bit smaller one here. Okay, I put a 0 on this time. See how it goes. Okay, so it's clearly not perfectly symmetrical, so I'm going to spend a little time with my rotary tool trying to get that symmetrical, and my file probably a little bit. Okay, so I got that kind of cleaned up on top just so I could see what I was doing better. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by doing them up and down on the top here to try and get them as straight as I can across from each other, and then from this side and this side across there, and get one of those in each of those quadrants soldered down, and then we'll start filling in the spaces between them. So let's what I've done is I've cut some and set them on my little ceramic honeycomb pad, cut some little tiny pieces of solder. And if you've been around before here, you know I do a lot of pick soldering. I'm probably going to flux those and then pick a little bit of solder onto each of those. And then we should be able to flux this, position them, heat it till it flows, you know, pick up a couple more, add them, heat it till it flows, and do that. The thing about wires, though, when you're soldering them next to each other, like if I'm trying to do this, once I have them over there, if you're not careful, they will suck right to the one next to it. The solder will flow and it'll wick right up that seam and pull them together. And so we'll see how that goes. If I'm having that problem, another backup plan we could do is we could sweat some solder onto the surface here and then just place them, heat it to the point where it flows, place some more, heat them like that. That's how I did the first thing, but I was going to try and do it this way and see how it works. So let's give it a try. Well, if you're interested in learning how to pick solder, I'll put a link right there for you. Okay, I did a few of them. Let's flux this. Let's see just how close we are here. That's actually not too bad. I think this one might be a little bit too close this way, so I might push him just a bit, and then we'll start adding some more. Let's see how it goes. The trick will be to see how neatly I can do it. I have two more here, but I'm going to cut some more pieces, I think. Try and keep these pretty symmetrical. I had one stick together there. If you could tell on the camera, I'm not sure, but I think we got it realigned a little bit. Sometimes with a little luck you can pull them apart, although it's better if you can keep that from happening. Okay, I think it's time to take a look at those solder joints and make sure we're connected where we need to be. I think what I'm going to do, just to be safe, push this down into the pad. I might go around and pick a little bit of solder just to make sure we got all the way around to the end. So I'm going to cut a little bit more of that small solder, and we'll just make sure everything's soldered all the way to the end, because I think there was a few in there that weren't. Well, that's pretty darn cool. I like that. Let's cut off the excess. All right. I'm going to spend a little time filing this down, and then we can start thinking about the band. Got it kind of cleaned up, and I did a little bending with this, like I dipped down this part in the middle, pushed that up, pulled it down on the tips a little bit, just to give it some, so it's not just flat. It has some kind of interesting shape to it. So I'm going to let that pickle while we make the band. I'm going to make about an 8.5. So, and like I said, I'm going to use this low dome half round number 4, which is 5.89 millimeters wide. So first, let's measure how far in we want the split on the ends to go. I think maybe how about just right to the 1 centimeter or 10 millimeters. About right there. Okay. We'll just go over and use the jewelry saw to try and get those pretty straight. I'll be right back. So once I have those cut with a saw, sometimes I'll use a knife blade to kind of pry it open a little bit. Just like that. Just be careful. You can kind of spread it as far as you want, really. Just try and do it symmetrically on both sides. But let's go ahead and wrap this around the mandrel, make a band out of it. Now I'm going to spend a little time and file a flat spot up here. You can brace this against something if you need to get this nice and flat. Looks like it's sitting up pretty straight. So this is the hardest part for me, is getting these on straight. So sometimes I'll make a little mark with a marker, looking at it from the top side here, and it's centered on that band. So let's push this in here again so I don't have any involuntary drop-offs. Although that's unlikely, honestly, with these little wires. So, okay, let's try and get that as centered as we can. And I'm just going to flux it and solder it on. Okay. Here goes nothing. Just put one of these leaning against each of those legs and pieces, shank ends, whatever you want to call them. Again, this is one of those situations where pumping the heat into the bottom piece is important because it's partially buried in this magnesia block, which kind of insulates it. The band gets hot just by being in proximity to all this flame up here. But they both need to reach 1450, so you get a good solid bond between them. Well, it looks like we did. Always double check after you solder the band on if you're doing one of these. Everything feels pretty solid at the moment. I think that's going to be a pretty cool ring. I like it. May have to bend the tips of these up a little bit so it's not too stabby. Don't want a stabby ring. Okay, well, we'll let that clean up in the pickle for a while, get it polished up, and then I will set that stone. And we'll take a look at it at the end. Okay, got everything kind of polished up. Got the stone in here, and I put a little bit of tag board below it to get it to where I want it to be. I do this a little differently than some. I use this as my bezel pusher and this as my burnisher on my chain nose pliers. So, we'll start by getting this tucked up against that stone. Alright, once you have everything kind of pressed down, then I'm going to use this rounded outer part to rub that top edge. So that's really kind of what I was looking for. You know, look at it like this. Where I said I wanted this to have kind of a little wave to it, like that does. Hopefully I'm in frame. But I think it came out okay. I'd give myself about a B on this one. I think form-wise, I like how it came out. It's a pretty ring, and I like the sort of contrast of the turquoise, which is typically used in southwestern jewelry, with kind of an Art Deco motif, or maybe a maybe even a mid-century modern. I can't always tell the difference in my brain. But so I like the form. The finish on it, I don't think is that great. I could do a little better probably on these. It's a little hard when you're doing this kind of soldering to get a perfect, nice, clean, neat kind of space in between the wires, and I didn't succeed terribly well at that. And that's going to be the thing that I notice most about this. Although it really kind of does catch the light nice with that that pattern we created there. So I really like that, and I think having the waviness to it makes it even cooler. So, all right. Well, next time I'll try and figure out a better way to get that finish in there. But overall, I'm very pleased with it. So I think it's a successful design. All right. Okay, well that was the Art Deco turquoise ring. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. And I'd love it if you would take a moment and check out my main channel page. There's 413 videos prior to this one, I believe. So there's hours and hours and hours of content for you to check out. I try to do a wide mix of things, lots of projects at different skill levels, so you should be able to find something that's appropriate for whatever skill level you're at. Either way, there's lots of ideas for projects, so you can check it out and maybe get some ideas, hopefully. But come back and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Also, check out my video description down below. There's some important links there. A link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that community. There's a link to my merch store where you can get yourself one of those nice design idea books that I mentioned at the beginning. And there's a link to my ebook if you want to download that. It's a great way to have access to a whole bunch of video tutorials along with extra annotations about them. And a great way to support the channel. So check that out if you're interested. And come back and see us again. Thank you for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.